This is a gentle wellness sequence, really meant to support that alignment and release of the front body, any adhesions or restrictions that you currently might have in the front area of the body, or old wounds or healing you have. And so this is not in place of a medical program, okay? This is simply a simple, gentle wellness sequence that might provide you with some ease and some balance for your nervous system. So we'll need several props for this sequence. You'll want to have a bolster flat and a blanket underneath that bolster and a blanket on top. So these are all quarter folded, right? So I have it simply simple yoga blanket, and you can also use a beach towel. In front of your bolster, when you sit in front of the flat bolster, you'll want to have a rounded cushion. Now this can be a yoga bolster that's in that round variation, or you can also use a stack of towels. But you're going to have to get some real firm cushion for that. And sometimes couch cushions, other things that you might find that are circular in your home work real nice. Now we're starting with a position that is quite easeful and opening for the muscles and joints in the body, the front and the back. So when we put something under the legs, it's nice because it actually starts to stretch out the back of the body without causing tension or grip. So I'll use the bolster to help blend my motion into releasing, but at the same time I'm going to add some blocks. I'm going to add a belt, and then I'm going to come into my first supported chest opener. Now, manage the weight of the pelvis and the hips between the bolsters so that it feels like it's quite grounded. You want to actually let the buttocks center, and so if you need to touch the skin and kind of move it a little bit side to side so that you feel that your tailbone is relaxed on the floor and you're not lopsided. And then as you're motioning your arms outwards, you might want to use your blocks under your elbows to create that frequency and opening the chest. This is a gentle wellness series for healing the front body, so we're not going to be adding any sandbags today. It's going to be simple-minded, clearing out, guidance with the position of the body on all these props. So as the arms are heavy and supported, you also start to work your pelvis to relax, and then feel the guiding forces above the pelvic floor up into the lifted ribs and that separation at the ribs, intercostals. And then noticing right behind that space is the organs of respiration, the diaphragm, the lungs, the intercostals. So feeling the height of the lungs in the back body, can you move your shoulders back? And then I want you to actually get a hold of your belt and move back overhead, holding onto your belt so both arms have a steady hold of the belt. You're feeling that reaction of length through the chest, reach through the arms, bend through the elbows. Breathe slow and deep. Now recognize that the hold of the belt doesn't require you to grip up in the ribs and the belly, but it does encourage that expansion and flexibility and motion of the muscles of the core of the body. So we're starting to kind of filter our circulation attempt here to ease the holding patterns, which could be restrictions in your front body. And that area can have some adhesions, some scar tissue. So give it some time to expand and then settle into that expansion. Breathing slow in through the nose. Belly fills. Diaphragm moves downwards. Exhale, relax the throat, the mouth, the breath releases out of your mouth, and you'll feel the core move back in, and then it flows up, ascension in towards the heart. Now let go of your belt, and then I want you to let your hands push those blocks a little farther down, and we're going to come into a Baddha Konasana pose. I want you to find one that's really truly comfortable for your hips. So if this feels safe for you and you don't want to roll to the side to come up and change that shape, you could take your knees out wide and rest the heels to touch. This could be an easeful way to get into Baddha Konasana without lifting and turning and torquing. You can also move your bolster with your feet a little bit forward and then come into that pose with the feet together, knees out on the bolster. And then I would encourage you to use your blocks to settle them under the legs, and then kind of feel that roll out of the bolster, and then eventually you're centered onto the blocks. I encourage the blocks to be a part of this one. So that pelvic floor can open and restore, and most of that detail is about stimulating the flow of lymph, right? The intensify the flush of the lymph nodes, stimulating the immune system. So we can regenerate, we can heal, and rehabilitate our tissues. So we continue this expansiveness. Now if you decide you want to go a little bit more detailed than this, you would remove your blocks. Those of you that are going to come up, you're going to bring your feet down next to your sitting bones and then roll to the side. And then as you position yourself up, you'll take your feet together, get your belt, bring it over. Well, you can buckle it up in front of yourself, or you can make a loop and then buckle it up. I hardly ever do it that way, so it's good to change it up. So I'm going to get just the right amount of scoop of my feet and then slide the belt so it's a pretty small loop, really. Under the low back to the eyebrows of the buttocks. And then I'll slide in my blocks and take repose into Supta Baddha Konasana. Much deeper stretch with the belt. I can actually tug the belt and make it a little bit more defined in the inner thigh sensation, in the very frontal hip bones. Okay? And then it lands in my low back. As far as the intensity, this is a back bending persuasion through your spinal column. So let's take our arms. So we're going to bring the arms to cross, right arm over left arm over the upper chest, and intertwine the arms and move them back towards your face. So try to keep the elbows a little lifted, moving them back. Garudasana arms. Now change the crossing, intertwine. Get some energy flowing through your arms. Feel them move back. Now let the breath be complete and full on both sides of the in and out breath. On receiving and letting go. And then as you uncross, stretch both arms behind you. Try to get that equal vibration through right and left armpit, separating the hands. And then stretch your arms back open. And then as you lower down your arms by your sides, take the pose fully. Whether you have the legs on the bolster, as I was showing early on, or you're into the bound angle with the belt. Either one will be safe for rehabilitation in the core, since we are lifted up on our props, right on the bolster under the spine. Let your eyes close, turning the focus inwards. Okay, now can you shift your shoulder blades and push them back to the bolster and squeeze them in towards the spine? Let your belly soften. Consider the effectiveness of creating an internal calm. Now, as we unbuckle the belt, if you're on the bolster with the legs, there's no problem. You're going to slide your feet off of the bolster now. For all of us, we're going to end up with our feet hips distance apart. Scoot your pelvis a little farther downwards. And then as we're going to rock and roll a little bit, knees are going to swish side to side. Emphasize your back on the bolster. So really feel that it's pinned back. And then anything that flows from side to side has that complete opportunity to motion. And as I mentioned in the beginning, this is gentle wellness. So very simple patterns. And then roll to a side and let your hands bring you up. And then we're going to take our bolster from behind us and actually turn it across the mat horizontally. And then, if you've got this cushion in front, if you don't have the extra round bolster, you can sit on the blankets and then use your flat bolster in front of you. So that would work out just as well. Now, very important here that when I stretch out my legs into this wide angle, it's an angle in my back. I'm sitting central on my bolster. My feet are stretching out. Now, as you do get that bolster in front of you up, I want you to place a block underneath the edge of the bolster closest to your groins. And if you would like to have a blanket on top, you're going to take one and fold it up like that, and so your head can be onto that blanket. You might need 2 blankets. You'll find out as you go into the pose. So this is called Upavista Konasana, wide angle. You're going to lean forward, and you want to find that you push the bolster down a little bit, and then your ribs can start to move over so that you can regenerate in the core of the body. And then as you lower down, your arms could be on the flooring, they could be on the bolster, and your forehead tucks in, tucking your chin into the chest. Let your feet flex, get a feeling of the energy flowing through your legs. Be here for a few moments. Feel the space between the vertebrae. Let the lungs inflate. Release the spine and the back of the pelvis, including your hips. Now come up and try to bring your blanket that's on top lengthwise on that bolster so you have a little more height, and then reach your hands together, palms together on the bolster, and then feel where the situation is lying in the legs. And notice that sensation of leg muscles. And let them just be. Let them descend so the focus is not on gripping your thighs, it's on the descent of the leg, the ascending spine out of the pelvis, the belly moving with the breath. Now slide your hands onto the short edge of the bolster, take the blanket off. And then as you tilt the bolster up, you're going to lean forwards and feel that conscious awareness of your mid to lower core when you actually press into something that's a little higher than your chest. So you want to be slow and meaningful for the support from your back arch into the spine moving forwards. And then let's take the right foot to tuck in. So I'm going to bring the right foot in towards the left inner thigh. And then I'm going to place my left foot forward, crossing. So it's a simple cross-legged position with the left foot in front of the right. And I'm going to lean down, and I do like to use a block under each of my knees for this one. You might be comfortable without any props under your knees. If so, go there, but recognize that if it's comfortable with the props, it must be a sign of possibilities for creating ease. So feel that body leaning forwards, creating that space in the back. And you can go a little farther front if that feels that the deepening sensation in the hip is necessary. And then we come back up to center. And what we're going to do is take our leg back to pigeon. So I want you to move your left thigh back. I'm going to position my blanket behind me. Okay? So you'll have it close enough so that the knee can be touching to that back blanket as you stretch your left thigh back, your right leg forward, and so forth. You want to get a feel here of leaning front and then lowering down completely to your bolster. So I'm going to pull it in so it's under my, right below my sternum, so right where the ribs connect at the top of the waist, so it's not in my belly, and then turn my head to the left. Right, so I have my right knee forward, my left leg back, turning my head so my right side of my face is on the bolster. Let the body press lightly into the forearms. So you'll feel your elbows touch down. You'll feel the fingers spread open. Yeah, and just let your eyes close and sense that deeper sensation in your right hip. So kind of lightly open up into the hips. Now, as you stay here for a few more moments, let your body soak it up. Can you use the props so that you really do feel as if you can connect into surrender, into the support. Hands slide back. We're going to push a little bit with our palms. We're going to lift up our head at the same balancing moment. And then feel when you're here and you're lengthening through torso, front, and back, right? So my back is in extension, right? I'm strengthening in my posterior core muscles or corpuscles. And then we're going to lean heavy on the right hip, and then you're going to switch it. So you're going to come up, you're going to bring your left foot in, your right leg out, and just kind of notice when you start to align if you need your blocks. Remember, we're going to have seated, cross-legged pose, right foot forward of left now. Blocks under legs. You can also use your blankets if the blocks are feeling a little too jabby into the skin or the bones. And then I take the bolster up. Now this time, we're going to take the bolster up. That's the difference. And I want you to work your way towards a little mild arching and rounding of the back, similar to cat-cow, but the feeling of where gravity flows through many parts. So I'm going to round my back, chin draws into chest, and then I'm going to feel my ribs move forward and arch my back. So fine-tune the wave of movement so it feels very soothing and almost subtle undercurrent of breath. Feel the arch, feel the rounding. Notice if it's easier to do the rounding at just your neck. Okay, so can you actually build up some movement in your back to round? Okay. Now finally, use the body weight into your arms, into the bolster to tip you forwards. Breathing, inner thigh sensation, stretching. You know, if you want to add your sandbag to this one, you could add a sandbag on the right thigh, the thigh that is connected to the foot in front. That would be the thigh you would monitor with sand to add more hip stretch. And then let's come back into pigeon. So lower the bolster kindly down. Take the right leg back behind you. Formulate movement into the side body, into the ribs, and the management of the arms, right? So if I lower down and I have my forearms on the floor, it's kind of nice to have these two bolsters for this sequence. It's a very different way to manage your restorative patterns, right? You feel really supported. Noticing the heart rate. You might feel that when you're pushing into the thick cushion under your chest. The back leg is pretty passive. You'll feel that passivity in the right thigh helps the left hip receive the circulation. And if it's a fairly mild stretch for you, I would recommend you stay with all the props. So it still is getting into the hip surface and penetrating a little more density, right? So keep going with the pattern. Stay with it. Breathing. Feel the elasticity of the lungs in the back. Now, as we come back, we're going to slide the hands back. We're actually going to push back into a downward facing dog. So I want you to use your props for this one. You're going to hook your toes under right foot. You're going to lift up your mid-back and step the left foot back however it works for you to get that foot back there. You might have a different way to get than I did. So I'm going to tread through my feet, alternate bending my knees, kind of pedal out my dog pose. And then I'm going to enter coming down to my bolster under my knees, which is very different for most of us. And feel the hands slide a little farther forward so you really spread out your palms. And then push back and up and let your head touch to your bolster. If it's nowhere near your bolster, it's really important you get it onto the bolster. So for this one, you might go back to kneeling and get a blanket or two on top of your bolster, so that you can use the blanket that's next to your feet on top of your bolster as well. So your head touches down so that you're actually supporting your head like you would in an inversion. You want to be supported at your the downward spot. So a headstand, you'd be supported under the crown, a shoulder stand at the back of the neck, right? In this pose, we're connected at the forehead. You want to feel the forehead touching to the blanket or bolster. Okay, now build that endurance. Walk your hands on back, walk your feet on forwards. If you've got some props in the way, move them away so you can take forward bend. I'm going to move my blanket away and my bolster here, so that when I take my forward bend, I'm actually entirely supported. So when I come down here, with my feet about hips distance, my head is not completely touching too, so you might stack your bolsters, hopefully they won't fall over, and see if you can get your head to touch right at your forehead. The forehead may be holding your bolsters together. Bring your hands on top of the bolsters and be here in this inversion. Let your hips get a sense of stretching back. Be super supported. Walk the feet out as wide as your mat is. Let your knees bend. Let the belly relax and move with that fluidity of the breath. So we always want to include inversions in our practice for restorative sequencing, always for supporting the immune system. And in this practice right here, we've done our inversion with our forward bend. But I want to add a Viparita Karani to the sequence. So if you want to end your practice here, and that's enough for you today, you can come back and roll up the spine. And complete your practice, walk into your day. Or you can go from here and then take a bolster to a wall space. And I would encourage you when you come up into this one to be very cautious on the pressure in your core. So you're going to want a blanket distant from the bolster, and you also want your bolster so it's next to the wall, right at the edge. Okay? So let's take it so that when I come upside down, I have my belt. Okay? So when you get your rear to the wall, if you're a little leery about coming up and maybe you have some abdominal concerns or healing, regenerating, you might come up to this pose by sliding yourself to the wall, be on your back to start. So that's okay. You can slide your legs up to the wall that way without a bolster, that's fine, or have your legs up on a chair. But in this position, I'm going to encourage you to maybe be able to guide your legs to swing up the wall and carefully maneuver yourself so that you have all the support without any pressure on your feet today. So no sand, pressure, which will increase the flow of lymph, right? So it's that weight differential, and you could use that. I suppose there's no forbidden prop usage, I guess, in this group of poses I teach. All right, so I'm going to take my belt and layer the belt to the center of the back of my legs. I'm going to buckle it up, and I'm going to slide it so that it's holding my legs quite nicely. It's really getting a full hold of my legs. Okay. So I've got it fairly high up on the legs, and that gives me a sense of containment. And then as I lower my hands back behind me, that contentment sweeps through the lungs. So feeling that fluidity through the natural arch of the lower back, through the spinal column into the back of the lungs and the shoulders. And then as you position your mind into a quieting mode, relax your thoughts and gather your attention on the even rhythm of your breath. Now really experience the position internally and notice what comes up, right? You might feel different when you're inverted. You might notice the mind is quieter. It's a different experience for the thought process, I think, when you're upside down. So be present with the next breath. Create space at the very back of the pelvis, high up on the back of the pelvis. So be here for 5 to 15 minutes. If your legs are up on a chair seat or a couch, you might be there a little longer, right? When the feet are extended up and the legs are straight, it will likely shift your circulation in your feet. You might get tingly. That's usually a message when it's time to come out. So if you do have that disruption of circulation, just come out of the pose. So give yourself a few more moments to enjoy. You can always add in some longer pauses to the exhalation, back to the inhale. So notice the breath cycle. And as we come to the end of the pose cycle, we continue the breath cycle. So I'm going to give you a few instructions on the breathing. So I want you to either let your legs stay here, or your legs could shift into a Baddha Konasana position. Release the belt, bring your feet together, your knees apart at the wall. Or you could decide to bring your arms down, slide your blanket back, carefully slide back. This is your third option for this breath round. And have your knees out, your feet together, with your feet touching the wall, so you're stretching the foot, but your legs are supported on the bolster. Okay, so this would probably be the most serene of the three options, would be to slide back and have your feet actually at the wall to stretch the roots of the toes. So please come into this for a few moments with the focus on breath. I'll bring you through the instruction. So feel the movement of the abdominal wall and the diaphragm descending and ascending. Gradually attend to a feeling of slight flexion and extension of the breath. Relax your eyes. Now in the next few moments you're going to gather the knees so they position in together, and then I want you to come to a position of rolling to the side and sit yourself up for a few moments with that collective awareness of the inversion process, the relaxation process internally, and then as your head bows to the heart center, surrendering there, bowing into your heart. Thank you for joining me for the practice. I hope that was very simple alignment and easygoing. It's nice to use an extra bolster in the practice. Check out some of the information that I've sent out on sandbag breathing, and you might find that to be helpful. I'll do another little episode that's just on sandbag breathing.